I wanted to show you another thing as we're working on making these puzzle pieces. What if we had modeled these at the size we had and decided, which was 3/4 of an inch cubed, that's how we mocked up our puzzle parts. What if we decided that we wanted to build these out of blocks that were a 1/2 an inch cubed, 1/2 an inch width, 1/2 an inch height, 1/2 an inch depth, instead of 3/4 of an inch? How would I go about changing this? Well, I'd have to go back through and start to edit some of my dimensions, right? So I can go into my sketch. There's the sketch that created the first extrusion. I created that T shape first, extruded it 1 block. This browser shows you the history of how I created my part. And then I created this sketch on the face of the T down at the bottom, that square, and I extruded it forward. Well, I'd just go back to the beginning, right click on the sketch, edit, and I'd come back in and I would take this dimension and I would make it 0.5, and oh, that kind of messed some things up. And I've got to start going around and changing some of these dimensions. And well, if this is 0.5 and 0.5 and that's 0.5, the overall is going to be 1.5. And as you update those and finish sketch, you can see it's going to update. But I've got to go through and tweak some more, don't I? So I got to edit sketch. Oh, I've got to get this one. And I've got to get this one. Oh, something's wrong there. Let's hit undo. Let's go back. I think I hit 1.5. You got to go through and update all these, right? It's looking a little better, but it still doesn't look proportional to what I had. Oh, the extrusion, the depth. I've got to edit the feature. And that was 0.75 as well, so I'd update that to 0.5, and I'd work my way up. I've got to do this piece, right? This is a little tedious. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we could model in a way that we might have to change the size someday? Now that one updated actually, but it's the distance that didn't, so I'll update the feature and change that to 0.5. Okay, so I got it. It didn't seem terrible. It took me, what, a minute or so, a couple minutes. But it would be really nice if there was a way to change one thing, and there is. And I'm not talking about on a drawing just changing the scale, because if we change the scale, we didn't actually change the model. I wanted to truly change the model and get it down to the correct size. Well, consider this one. I'll show you how I did it in a second. But this one right here, if I go into my first sketch, I'm going to right click and say edit sketch. I've got all those 0.75s, but you'll notice there's an f of x. This 1.5 is not actually 1.5 inches. It's a function, like a formula, that when solved equals 1.5. So notice all these dimensions are f of x. What I'm showing right now is called parametric modeling. Notice this one at the bottom. This one is not a function. This is our independent value, or an independent variable. If I change this one, okay, it is free to change. It is independent. But all of the other ones are dependents. They are formulas or functions written based on this one right here. So when I make this one a 1/2 an inch, all of the others update. All of them, including the extrude depths. Everything updated. I literally changed one dimension and proportionally scaled up my entire model. What if I want it to be 2 inches? So I want each block to be 2 by 2 by 2. You can see how the sketch got quite a bit bigger on my paper, and when I hit finish sketch, go back to 3D, boop, it blew up. So how did I do that? Well, let me show you by starting a new part file. Start new sketch. Okay, when I began, I went ahead and made the first segment 3/4 of an inch. I got my horizontal constraint at 0 degrees, and there you go. And let me right click and say OK to get off of that so I can show you something. When you have dimensions here, if I double click to edit that dimension, the dimension has a name right here, D0. Okay, watch this. Let me go ahead and make my next segment. This one was going to be 1.5 inches, if you remember, and at 90 degrees. I'm going to right click, say OK, turn the tool off. I need to have all my tools off to select the dimensions and move them. Let me double click on this one. This has a different name. This dimension has been labeled or called D1. So each dimension is given a name. And you can imagine the next one is probably going to be D2. They just go in order as you create more and more dimensions as you go. Well, right here, as I write the value, I don't have to put a number. I am allowed to reference a name like D0. So I can use my base dimension, that 0.75, which is the width of one cube, and everywhere I dimension now a segment, I can think about if I want it to be 1 cube, 2 cubes, or 3 cubes. If I want it to be 2 cubes in length, then I would say D0 times 2. It'll reference the base dimension, which currently is 0.75, but later might get changed to 0.5. And it will always take whatever this dimension, whatever that is, and double it, so that this always stays proportional in basically a 1:2 ratio. And I continued on, and I did that with everything. So I did D0 and 90 degrees. Because I had turned the tool off. So let me just get my horizontal constraint. That will work, and I'll do my D0. I'll come up vertically, and I'll type again D0. I'll get my horizontal constraint, and this will be D0 times 3. Get a vertical constraint here, and this is going to be D0. And this horizontal constraint, again, D0. It's actually connecting to down there, I believe. So it's not even asking. And straight down. Boom. Okay. Hit Finish Sketch. And when I go to Extrude, here I can type D0 as well. So everything I just did, every dimension I gave, is now a function of D0. D0 being the bottom of the T to kind of show one block of width. So when I right click and edit this sketch and I update this to say 3 inches, everything changed, including the extrude depth. So you can see that my shape still looks proportional. Had I not done that, let's hit undo and go back. Okay. Had my extrusion depth just been 0.75, well, then my shape of the T would work if I edit that one dimension to say 3 inches. But now you can see proportionally the depth didn't grow with it. While everything became 3 or a multiple of 3, 3, 6, or 9, my depth stayed the 3/4 of an inch, so it looks flat. Well, the idea was that the model would grow proportionally in all directions, and that is why I used a formula. And so I'm going to update that to be, again, D0. Now it's back to being proportional. I could finish by making a new sketch and adding that last little block on. It's the same thing, but I wanted you to see something called parametric modeling.